Shields up, Iron Breakers. We're kind here coming at you with another video, and today I want to talk about grinding in video games. There's always been a bit of a negative connotation when it comes to this particular topic. People always saying, oh, I don't want to grind for things. I want to progress at a decent pace and move on. But the reality of it is, when I really look deep into my gaming history, I kind of begin to realize that actually on a subconscious level, I probably do enjoy the grind. I probably do enjoy the repetition of certain things. I enjoy the routine, so to speak, of logging on to a certain video game and grinding for a little bit of gear, increasing the power of my character, or trying out a completely different character or spaceship or whatever, depending on the game that is being played at the time. And I realize that this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I think that a lot of people, if you really look down to your gaming history and you look down to the titles that you have played and the games that you've spent a lot of time in, I think you'll realize that you actually do enjoy the grind to a certain degree. So like, for instance, me. One of the first games that I remember really playing a long period of time and doing multiple characters and multiple builds and grinding for gear and that stuff is Diablo 2. That's probably one of the first games where I've ever done that. And I've grinded like hell in that game. Like, we're talking about, I would go up, and every time that I would start, like, you know, playing with friends and stuff, and I would boot up a sorceress, get her just like completely kitted out with magic fine gear, go do Mephisto runs. That was my thing back in the day. Just like straight up Mephisto runs nonstop and just like start gearing up a bunch of other characters. So I enjoyed that process of grinding that gear, of creating new characters, of trying out new things. There's always an objective. For sure, there's always an objective to the grind, whether that is to acquire gear for other characters, whether that is to acquire gold to finance certain things, but ultimately there's always an objective at the end of it. And the objective of the grind is always to accrue more power, or to acquire more diversity of playstyles for different characters, and, you know, or maybe even the same character that you already have, depending if even the grindy game even is you know, a character-based game. The game that I played after Diablo 2 for long stretches of time was hands down World of Warcraft. Again, there's tons of grind in World of Warcraft. There's just like all these things that you can do, and once they've added achievements to it, which you could even grind for achievements, which are things that you don't even need, and as a matter of fact, we also have achievements nowadays on consoles. I'm not saying that it started on World of Warcraft. I think achievements actually started with the Xbox, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. But basically that created its own grind, where there's now all of these gamers that will even buy like cheap-ass games just to grind out for achievements or trophies if you're on PlayStation, and then they resell those games, take them back to the store, or sometimes you even rent those games, get the achievements, and then get them out. A lot of times we even see players that they just start a game, and the thing that they're concerned about is whether or not certain achievements are missable. Like if you can miss achievements in that game so that they know, oh, when this time comes, I need to do this thing in order to get this achievement. So I think whether to a bigger or a lesser extent, we all enjoy some form of a grind. It kind of just feels like our brains are just mentally not prepared, they're mentally formatted that way for us to enjoy chipping away at things and seeing progress, and, you know, engaging with systems and seeing shifts in power and so on and so forth when it comes to entertainment, at least. And again, I'm not claiming that this is some kind of scientific study that I have here. I'm just really spitballing and thinking about this out loud. Probably other people have talked about this quite a bit. After World of Warcraft, we get into an interesting thing for me, which is Dark Souls. Now, when I played Dark Souls, you can't really say, oh, you were grinding for something. I mean, maybe not necessarily, but I was building multiple builds, and those builds would sometimes include a certain amount of grind. Like, for instance, you want to get yourself a Baldur's Side sword for a specific build, you got to grind. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. You're hunting for a sword. You're still grinding. You're going to go up against monsters, kill a bunch of them, kill a bunch of Baldur Knights, then go back to the bonfire and repeat ad infinite, right? So you are grinding for things. At the same time, maybe, oh, I need to upgrade this piece of gear to a certain level. You're probably going to end up killing the Abyss Knights. I actually forget their proper name, back in New Londo Ruins, right? You're going to end up there getting those Titanite chunks to upgrade the item that you want. Depending on what item it is, naturally, you might end up grinding those little clam-looking things for Twinkling Titanite, if that's what you're looking for. Or other enemies, like if you want the green stuff, you'll be going after the little sludge-looking things back in Blighttown. So in a way, Dark Souls itself also instigated that part of me to get a little bit of grinding done, do all of these different builds. Then went Dark Souls 2, then we went, Bloodborne and other Souls-like games. Interestingly enough, I never really grinded other Souls-like games. I don't know why that is. I guess just kind of like once you've had the original, it's a little bit hard to go back. But ultimately, moving on from that, we've also done, which is very interesting, we've also done something completely out of character for me, which was Elite Dangerous, where I've grinded the crap out of that game. For those of you that do play Elite Dangerous, you'll know that I actually had a cutter, which is like so much grind to get yourself a cutter. I don't know if the grind is still the same when it comes to the repetition grind of the Imperials and stuff. But oh my god, I grinded so hard for that friggin' thing. Hours and hours of grind. The one thing that I didn't find the patience to grind and that kind of like burned me out was when I needed to go and get the SRV to go get like Guardian Ruin stuff in order to be able to shoot Thargoids. And right now I'm sure I've lost most of you guys. You guys are like, what the hell is he even talking about? But ultimately it's all about talking about grind, right? So and naturally the most recent one is Monster Hunter World. There's tons and tons of grind on there. And it always goes back to kind of like the same primal need to be more powerful, to be more capable of taking on bigger challenges, of killing things faster, of just being better at the game. And usually I stay in these loops for all of these games until I feel like maybe the power is just not enough, or maybe there's just not enough diversity of things, or maybe the repetition got just a little bit too samey, which that was definitely the case in Elite Dangerous, because like every new thing that came to the game, it's like, oh yeah, take out your SRV, and I'm like, dude, I got this big fucking ship. I don't want to hear you talk to me about no fucking SRV, man. I don't want to talk about SRVs. I want to talk about this big ship that I built. I got a cutter, and you're talking to me about SRVs, That's kind of the way it goes. With Monster Hunter World, the reason I've been slowing down quite a bit is because the only real thing that I have right now to acquire power for my character is decoration farming. And decoration farming is just so RNG that I'm just like, I just kind of don't feel the desire to go after those items, right? And so basically, I'm kind of building up to a point here, and you guys are wondering, what's this rant that Rory's going on right now? And the point is, all of these games that I told you right now, none of them have like an artificial way for you to skip the grind to a certain extent. I mean, you can skip the grind, I guess, in World of Warcraft a little bit by boosting a character, but ultimately, if you're talking about the end game, you can't really skip the grind. Sure, you can buy some items to a certain extent with real money, because you can nowadays, but even those items, like, they'll only take you so far, and ultimately your skill will have to take you a little bit further, or sometimes your class as well, because the balance of classes right now is pretty bad. But ultimately, none of these games really offers a quick, easy way to skip the grind, right? You always have to do the grind, and the grind, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like, for instance, I don't think that grinding in Monster Hunter World was bad, because it was fun. I'm killing monsters, I'm chopping tails, the whole gameplay loop is usually satisfying enough that, you don't necessarily feel like you need to skip it. Now, when it comes to World of Warcraft, some of you probably will say, oh, dude, I wish I could skip this thing or that thing or the other thing in order to just level up faster, be able to do things faster. And I'll agree with you there, but ultimately the option is not necessarily there. Same thing for Diablo 2, same thing for Diablo 3, and plenty of other games that I've grinded on. The option to just skip the grind is not there. Elite Dangerous, definitely. Elite Dangerous, to a whole nother level, you definitely can't skip the grind. So the problem that has been arising, and this is not something that's, recent or something. This is something that's been building up for quite some time now. The problem that's been rising is that a lot of companies see this and they want to extend this for as long as possible. Something that we've witnessed a little bit more recently, and I say recently, again, air quotes, was in Destiny 2. where they just straight up limited everyone's experience gains to ridiculous extents. Like if you had played, I think it was for 3 hours or 5 hours or whatever, you would actually be gaining something like 90% less experience than you should be, which is like, that was disgusting, the way that they did that and how they didn't tell anyone and how nobody knew until someone actually tested it and they were like, dude, there's something really fucked up going on here, right? And companies are manipulating this further and further. Like a more recent example that I would bring up and that a lot of people hate me because I talk about this is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I think it's ridiculous the amount of grind that you got to do in order to level up, and the fact that you can buy an XP booster clearly shows you that it's like, it's not designed to be like that. So where do we draw the line in these things? Should people ever be able to pay to skip progress? We see this a lot on free-to-play games, for instance, right? Where people pay and companies clearly artificially inflate, and it's like, look, dude, you got the time, you don't have to pay. If you got the time, you can just like grind away on there. But it's like you're grinding at a slower pace than somebody else can grind if they put in a monetary value. And so it's like, I guess the point of this video is to say that I like games that have grind. And I would like to play more games in the future that have a certain level of grind to them. But I find myself more and more suspicious whenever a game that has a certain degree of grind comes out. Because I'm always wondering, like, if there are options like those XP boosters or any kind of boosters to skip things, does that mean that the experience is going to be less fun if I don't have said booster? What does that do for the difficulty of the game too? Like, say the game has multiple levels of difficulty, which is also the case in Assassin's Creed. Like, how do I look at that? Like, people will obviously say, well, you just play whatever difficulty you feel comfortable playing. The difficulty that is more fun to you. But it's like, to me, fun is being challenged, right? I want to be challenged. But if then the game is balanced around, me basically having to spend more time in the game than other people, or maybe I'll just use the boost, but at that point, then I'll level up faster, so in a way it almost feels like I'm cheating, right? And I keep going back to Assassin's Creed Odyssey. There will be thousands of examples that you can put in that place. Now and in the future, for sure. And how long before people get to a point where they're like, you know what? This is some bullshit, Because people will get to that point. And we've seen that with loot boxes. Because, the grind was artificially increased there by basically giving you random shit. And you never knew if what you were going to get is what you actually wanted. The game that you guys will be watching in the background during this video is going to be World of Warcraft, which is actually doing a poor job of managing their loot. I've talked about it in the past. I don't want to extend my particular chat about that in this video, but, when you get too much RNG, when you try to artificially extend the grind, whether that is through slowing down progress or making certain things too much RNG, at what point does this become like a serious problem for our community as a whole? Because we're watching right now a lot of video game companies taking a bit of a dive when it comes to their stock prices, right? And it's like, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit here. Could we be seeing a bit of a crash? And could the artificial inflation of grind be one of the causes? It's almost like, the story of the chicken that laid the golden eggs, and the farmer is just like, oh, dude, this chicken's laying golden eggs. One of these days, this chicken's going to be gone. Maybe I can cut up this chicken and figure out how she's doing the golden eggs. Then I can just do the golden eggs myself. So he cuts up the chicken. By the way, this is very interesting because I did not know this story up until a very short time because I guess I didn't remember. They probably told it to me when I was a child. But I didn't know this story by head. Now, there was a book that my kid had. My kid is 3 years old. And so he's like, oh, Daddy, read this book to me. And it's like, oh, the chicken and the golden eggs. So I start reading this book to my son. This is supposed to be for his age. And there's actually a picture of the farmer with a knife cutting open the chicken. And I was like, this is maybe not for my son's age. I don't know. But either way, point of this whole thing is that the farmer cut up that chicken and that chicken fucking died and there were no more golden eggs. And I kind of feel that is what a lot of gaming companies are doing right now, whether that is through the artificial inflation of the grind, or whether that is through the introduction of loot boxes and other mechanics to kind of throttle your progress throughout their video game to artificially expand the playtime that you have on said video game in order to charge you for additional microtransactions or other systems that they have in place to try and get more money out of you. And by doing that, there are now a lot of people that are just like, they've had enough and they're just buying less and less video games. So in a way, could the gaming industry be the chicken with the golden eggs? Because, I mean, gaming industry, at one point, I'm not sure if it's still the case, probably is, was bigger than the Hollywood industry. Probably still is bigger than the Hollywood industry. That's pretty big. It's pretty fucking big. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And are these gaming companies finally getting to the point where they're cutting open that chicken and the golden eggs are going to start dropping? The golden eggs are going to start disappearing, actually. I mean, I don't know. I just kind of felt like talking about this. Isn't it weird to say that I like grinding in video games? But I do. I really do. If I really think down to it, and especially with my gaming history and the games that I like to play for long periods of time. Monster Hunter, I mean, it's a grindy game. It's a game where you grind for monsters, just get more powerful to kill bigger monsters. World of Warcraft, grindy game. You just grind to artificially inflate a number that tells everybody else how powerful your character is. But it definitely feels good to see that number. Whether that number is Reddit.io, whether that number is gear score or item level. Sorry, gear score was like back in God knows when, probably back in Wrath of the Lich King days. And it still feels good to do it. It still feels good to have a routine in some of those games. It's kind of weird. But what do you guys think about all this? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.